welcome to the LHC. And today, like so many people in the last few months, we're going to talk about Evangelion, because it's now arrived on Netflix, but we don't do regular stuff here at the LHC. Instead of talking about a TV show that you can easily access via the internet, we're going to talk about the movie sequels to that TV show that you can only get on Blu-ray. Yeah!
They're not sequels. They're replacements.
They're replacement sequels. They came after.
Yeah, they did. Well, to be fair, there's been several versions of Evangelion. I mean, I first saw Evangelion in the Ultimate Edition, and then I first purchased it as the Platinum Edition, which was when they'd redone a lot of the voices and audio and artwork. So yeah, it's been around a while.
Oh yeah.
Sort of depressingly long, even though it doesn't feel like it's one of the old ones. That's like when you say...
It's not old, it was made in the 90s.
Yeah,
Stuff
I know,
in the 90s is not old.
It is, though. It's over 20 years, mate.
Yeah.
It's just... No, it's not great.
No.
We're old. Accept it, we're old.
Brave Raideen is old. I'll even give you that Original Gundam is old.
The original Gundam was old when I first got into anime 20 years ago, okay? Original Gundam is incredibly old. 80s is really old. No, but unfortunately, I have to admit, 90s is old now as well. 2000s, I will argue. Early 2000s, I will argue
original
about.
run October 1995 to March 1996.
Oh, God, that is old.
That isn't old. Anything in the 90s is basically brand new.
No, it's not. Spoiler warning, usual spoiler warning. So
spoiler warning is for all of Evangelion, and specifically Evangelion, Rebuild of Evangelion 1.11.
Yeah, You Are Not Alone or You Are Alone. I don't even know whether it's called You Are Alone or Not Alone because the not is in brackets.
You are brackets, not alone. They do that. They put the not in brackets all the time.
Yeah, I know that. But no, the thing is, there is definitely not spoilers for film 2 onwards because I haven't seen them and you're not allowed to talk about them.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk
bloody
about
spoilers. Them. So the reason I was going to say that we have to say full spoilers for the entire series is because, so I watched the film, and before we won't go into any much detail, I feel like we're going to have to talk about the series rather than the film, because I don't know, it's been, 5 to 10, now it's probably been almost 10 years since I actually watched the original series, but I didn't spot any difference between the film. It was just a shinier version of the first few episodes.
It does,
and I know it gets really different later on, because
Yeah.
I know there's entire characters that are introduced that aren't in the original series. But I don't know, I was going to look up like differences between the film and the original series, but I couldn't tell you a single difference other than the graphics and the abbreviation of most scenes and characters who aren't Shinji.
I'd say there's a considerable bit of differences if you put them next to each other, especially in terms of design of the angels. But like other things, like how Misato acts is very different in the first few episodes of Evangelion compared to this movie.
So I thought the only thing I did think was that they threw out a lot of late game stuff really early because they don't have time to slow burn it. Like taking Shinji down to see Lilith was a big deal.
And Misato knows what Lilith is.
Yeah, immediately on day one.
Not on day one. She takes him down there to sort of convince him to...
No. She knows. Sorry, I meant at the beginning of the series. She knows, certainly. And doesn't have to investigate. But the other ones being things like the fact that, Karu's just there at the end, talking complete nonsense. And do you remember, I don't know if it was what time you were with us, we went to an anime pub quiz, and one of the pub quiz sections was jargon, and it was name that jargon, and the round was they just read out a completely incomprehensible sentence that had no correlation to reality and just say, what's that from then?
Oh, I love that. Ava has fantastic jargon. Yes. Fantastic techno
the entire conversation at the end of this film with Karu is just the Dead Sea Scrolls has meant that the third Lilith child is here with Amascus and Dalmascus, and now you have to go. And it's just like, none of these words make sense. It's just all basically alluding to things related to Christian lore and sci-fi.
But how is that different than, say, when we started this thing with Razaphon, with referencing the
we
Mu
can definitely talk
that.
about... Yeah, no, Razaphon was another one.
Well, no, I think all
appeared in that jargon thing.
Of these genre shows, all like giant robot shows, like in the same way that space, sort of Star Trek has its own particular brand of technobabble. Nearly all robot shows have a kind of almost quasi-spiritual or sort of like totem-esque technobabble, because you have these giant things that are the focus of everybody's attention. So how can they not appear like a kind of, giant Buddha statue brought to life?
Let's not talk about cats.
Or Batman.
Oh god, yeah, Batman.
Yeah, Batman had a giant Buddha statue that was run by Two-Face.
Statues brought to life. The thing is, I do feel like there's two sorts of the jargon, though. I mean, there's where it's deliberately... So if you want to use Razaphon as an example, there is the early bit where people are like when the Mulians are talking and they're just using their own language, and it's a case of, I know this, you know this, we're not expositioning for everyone. And that's fine, I appreciate that. It's always good when that happens, because it's annoying when people are explaining a thing to a guy who already knows clearly what the thing is. It's just odd. But the other one is when you've built up the language. So Evangelion, when you're watching episode, 17, 18, and someone in the thing's going like, the synchronization rate has gone inversed and the berserker mode is active and the AT field is, inverting. That point, you already kind of know what all of those things are and what they're doing. But the film didn't. It did the other one, the one where it's just throwing words at you deliberately to obfuscate what it's actually meaning.
I don't think that's any different. I think when the secret shadowy dudes talk about it, that's as much part of technobabble for a giant robot show, particularly this one, as when the technical people are saying, "Oh, the nerve circuits are detaching," and saying pan blue, because that's what the old guys are supposed to represent. They're like the old nasty people who have this plan to keep on exerting their power over everyone else, and they just talk about it. And it's no different than when Dr. Hell says, "I'm going to send the next 3 units after the Mazinger." And stuff like that. It's the same stuff. It's just given a different kind of gravitas, because that's what Evangelion did when it first came out, was take these things that were literally for like a 5-year-old kid's show and sort of spin them up with basically a lot of pop psychology. If anything, the thing that's used to make things sound more important than it is like the pop psychology, like the whole of the end of the first season of Eva, the first 26 episodes of anime, is, hey, have you heard of this thing called therapy?
You all
really
need
helps
it.
me out.
Yeah.
No, I always say it really helped me out. That's what Hideki Anno is so often saying. It's like, having someone to talk to and people to trust and people that I could be vulnerable with helped me deal with, like, the pain of the everyday. It's like, that's why I think everyone seems to say, "Oh, Shinji getting the robot, why is it so down?" It's like, that's clearly the view of a very depressed person having to get out of bed in the morning. And everyone else talks to Shinji like getting in the Eva is important, or that more in the diegetic reason is that everyone's afraid for dying, but the actual like subtext version of the sort of the allegorical thing is, when you're really depressed, people want you to do things that everyone thinks is easy to do, but you can't do them, and you can't explain to them why you can't do them. It's as ridiculous as trying to argue your way out of piloting this giant, complicated robot.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always thought, that no one ever seems to mention when Shinji's all down and kind of like annoying and everything. But yeah, that's how a depressed person is when you're trying to tell them, get out of bed and go to work. It's like, why do I have to do this? Isn't it?
Yeah. I do agree. There is always that whole, it is a really underlying everyone needs therapy. But I've also thought it's quite a nice... I've always liked Evangelion's thing of, well, this is what happens when you put 14... It's like...
there's also like...
Magical Madoka, it's
Yeah.
like... This is what happens when you put young children in life or death situations. It starts off where they're going, this is so cool, this is like a TV show. And then they get hurt and someone dies. And then they have to keep fighting anyway. And it's like, oh no, we gave all of our teenagers PTSD. I guess we better give them therapy as well. Yeah, I like that. And... it's a nice thing to see the people should have therapy message being pushed.
Yeah. Well, that was always Eva's thing of...
But yeah.
People are messed up. But, the thing with the magic...
No, people are so fucked up. That is the line.
Yeah, but the Eva... But the thing with Eva and also...
one of the major reasons why you can't like Shinji, ever. You can't. I'm sorry. No.
Well, this Shinji hasn't done it. Let's leave that to the side.
Yeah, okay.
The idea here... Well, you've got to remember that happens in End of Eva, but I'll get to that maybe at some point. The thing with Madoka, when you brought up, and Eva, is this is the other sort of dimension to breaking down what Eva's about, is it's a deconstruction. It's like so many Heroes of Giant Robot shows are kids who have been away from their father for ages, and then their father just calls them up and goes, come over here, lad, I've got this giant robot. You should pilot this giant robot. And the guys... And, like... Generally, in like a kid's show, the guy's like all up for it, generally because aliens are invading, or what have you. And
like Nadesco.
Yeah, that's why Eva deconstructs that and says, no, if you were left alone from your father from a young age, and then dragged in at like the cusp of puberty to do something difficult and traumatic for him, that he'd been doing instead of raising you, that he cares about way more than you as a person... It wouldn't be as simple as, oh yeah, sure, Dad. Another good deconstruction that does it the other way, that kind of makes it cool, is Canon God Exocon, which was only ever a manga by the guy who did Gunsmith Cats. And that one, it's his grandfather, but what's great is his grandfather is such a weird, horrible guy. It's basically revealed in like the last third of the manga. Oh no, your grandfather is actually your father. Your father died... because he was going to be the original pilot, because he found out that your grandfather was sleeping with your mother.
Yeah, that's screwed up.
Yeah, the whole thing is just, like, Kenichi Soda, that's it. It's Kenichi Soda who made Gunsmith Cats going, Gunsmith Cats, that was a little bit horny, I guess, with the bomb lady who took drugs to forever look like she was really young, and... the mafia being run by a 6-foot-tall, like, super lesbian. I think I can get, like, more horny.
No. Hold my beer. I've got this.
Hold my beer, me.
Yeah.
So that's another good example of going, like, the other way. But Eva goes, like, perhaps the more sensible way of, when he first arrives, he thinks he's genuinely happy that he might see Shinji's generally happy that he might see his father again.
Yeah, my dad said he wants to see me, so I turned up. And then his dad's just like, get in the fucking robot. Get in the robot. Punch the monster. It's like, I don't really want to.
I do love, that's another thing that they break away, because generally when the robot is first launched against its first enemy, the robot is so unbelievably powerful in a Super Robot show, it generally beats the first enemy quite handily.
Yeah, but Shinji can't even walk.
Yes, but this is the thing, right at the start, the robot actually isn't that useful. And I like how the Evangelions are always kind of vulnerable throughout the entire show. They're always like,
it's
only
just
because
of the umbilical cable.
Yeah. It's not just
the umbilical cable is a big deal.
It's not just the umbilical cable, it's like, unless magic plot stuff happens, they are actually quite vulnerable to all the attacks that are thrown at them.
The angels are usually more powerful, because the angels are much better at AT fields than the actual Evas are.
Which is kind of interesting because, again, pop psychology, the AT field is the cause of like 90% of Shinji's problems, both in the cockpit and out of the cockpit. His own AT field causes like 90% of his problems, as does Misato's, because they can't get close to each other.
By the way, while we were talking, I did Google the differences between the original series and the first film, and I was right. It's bugger all. Like it's
you kind of have to start. You can't immediately make it completely different because you have to set the baseline of. I think this is important because it sets the baseline of Shinji is really lonely. He's really lonely because he's a neglected child.
and a shit
Misato
person.
is really lonely because she lost her father and is like driven for revenge. Ayanami is really lonely because she only sees one person as giving her any kind of self-worth.
Mm.
And these are the screwed up people who we're following.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, I just look. The only the differences are things like that whole scene with Karu is completely just like.
Well, it's just fan service so that we can see Karu and you know
considering
that
how
who's
little
with who.
he's in. This is the thing. If you look at the amount of like I don't know, it's like when you. A good example would be, I don't know, Boba Fett from Star Wars. It's where if you look at the merchandising, or if you look at the fan stuff, or if you look at the fandom generally, you'd think Karu was a major character. You'd think Boba Fett's a major character, and actually, they're in like 2 scenes or 2 episodes, and it doesn't. It's like Karu is literally a 2-episode character. He turns up and goes, "Hey, I'm here, I'm going to flirt with you, and hey, I'm going to be the new pilot, and I'm going to be your friend, and we're going to flirt, and it's going to be great." And then 1 episode later he goes, "Actually, I'm switching sides, I'm on the angel side, and I'm going to do evil things, and you're going to have to kill me." Ta-da! And he's 2 episodes, he's literally a 2-episode character. And
strictly speaking, in Eva, everyone's doing evil things.
No, I know, but they fleshed him out a bit in the manga of Eva, so he's in 2 volumes rather than 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So he's introduced a bit earlier, and he doesn't betray them for a bit later. That's basically it in the manga.
Yeah,
but
he actually fights an angel in the manga, doesn't he?
Full on. I can't remember. It's been years since I watched.
I think
the thing is,
he fights an angel, and he does have this whole thing of I don't know how to play this.
It's actually really difficult to read the manga because if you, like I, was buying the manga like as it came out and enjoying it, but in a fairly casual way because you didn't think that something like Eva was going to be, you'd never had any difficulty finding the manga. When you're getting 6 and 7, you can find it fairly easily. I wasn't like, got to pre-order this or anything. And then it gets to the episode, I think it's 10, book 10 or 11, or 10 and 11. The 2 volumes with Karu in, you cannot get for love nor money, or at least not for cheap money. The last time I looked, they were going for like £100 on eBay. And this was years ago, obviously. But I don't know if they ever reprinted them. But no, the amount of sales of like book 9 without Karu was all the people who were reading Eva for Eva. But the amount of people who just bought 10 and 11 because they're the 2 books with Karu in them meant the people who were buying the whole series often have a hole where those 2 volumes are. And that includes me. I actually have Evangelion the manga except for the Karu volumes.
That's
because
weird.
You can't get the bloody volumes because all of the bloody fan service of Karu people.
So you mean people bought up all of the printings of the Eva manga?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was okay. The demand for those 2 volumes with Karu in them was exponentially higher than the rest of them. So the publisher was just like, okay, so we sell X amount of these each time. Okay, there's going to be a bit of a drop off. Because that's how, buying volumes of books work. Yeah. And new people will come to the series and buy the whole thing slowly, so we need a bit of a, extra on top. And then they got to, the Karu volumes, and they just sold out instantly. And for some reason, even though they had a license to print money, the manufacturer didn't go, oh, I guess we'll have another publishing run of those 2 volumes so that everyone who wants them can have them. But no. Anyway, they might have reprinted it, but they hadn't reprinted it last time I looked, which was admittedly 5 years ago. But still, it's something that has annoyed me because it's literally a gap in my bookshelf where I couldn't find those 2 volumes. And I think if they did reprint them, it's like that whole thing of when you've got a series and then you find a reprint, but it's a different cover.
Yeah, it's going to have a different spine, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like I was buying the Great Teacher Onizuka original manga, I can't remember what it's called, the beach, young people on beach manga anyway. It's the GTO one that was before GTO.
Yeah.
And far less popular. But it was being released here by a publisher who went under when they were about 12 or 13 volumes in to the manga. So I own all of those ones, and they're a bit juvenile sometimes, but quite good, like GTO was, to be fair.
Yeah.
But the publisher going under, the rights, I believe, did get bought up by someone else. And then they started from book 1 again. Oh. So I just sort of went, oh, well, whatever. So I now have the option of, I could probably look at it now, and they probably caught up with where I was. It's been years and years and years. But I can now either buy and have it switch at a certain point, or I could go and rebuy the whole series in the form that they're now releasing them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just a bit much. Anyway, that was Ever the manga. Ever the film.
Well, I will say the one thing that's gotten a lot more personality with the animation update is all three angels that appear.
Yeah, no, they're much better.
Yeah, I do love in the movie version it's the fourth angel. In the TV it was the third. That's the angel that generally people think of when we think of
the first angel, the one with the two masks and everything.
Yeah, well, it has two masks because it has like its first mask burnt off and it regenerates.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I was always impressed at the level of like personality they were able to give that one particular angel, because it's generally the humanoid one that's seen the most. It's most like another opposing giant robot.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like appropriately scary and stuff like that.
Yeah,
because it can tilt its head. There's stuff because that's one thing that you only see a little bit in the movie that you do see a lot more of in the series is when they're shooting at it, and it's sort of like its mask face sort of tilts as it looks at being shot at, and it's like, what's going on?
Yeah. Now the other angels, you're right. Actually, after that one, I'm trying to think of all the ones, and it's a case of you've got the ones in the film being the crystalline shape monster, and you've got the centipede monster,
which wasn't like that in the. It didn't have those legs in the TV series.
No, that's true. But then I'm thinking of the other ones in the TV series, like there's the ball that makes the shadow.
Yep, that's a very famous one.
And then there's the one that's like a butterfly in orbit.
If you want to think of similar ones to that, the first angel that they fight,
there's the one underwater as well. The only one I can think of that's vaguely similar isn't the two together one.
Yeah, that's the one that divides.
Is the only one I can think of. Yeah.
It is kind of interesting that Nerve. I guess it shows the level of restrictions they're working under. Because one thing that was great in the TV series is they always spoke about how repairing any one of the Evas bankrupted another country and left millions starving. Was so that the all they have is like, let's put Shinji in front of it and get him to shoot at it, and that's all their plan until they actually generally that plan fails and they have to get someone else come up with a new plan. Because that's the only training they can give. It's
he's just not good.
Just shoot at it, and it's like that never seems to work.
Well, I think it's because he's not really neutralising the AT field, isn't he?
They say he is neutralising the AT field in the whatchamacallit, in the simulator. They say that you can do it from a distance, but yeah, it does seem odd, and it didn't. And
he puts the knife in at least to that
the centipede one.
Yeah,
the red sort of
whips of laser. That's the one. Laser whips.
It has laser whips as well, that's why even though he's neutralising the AT field, it doesn't get hurt because it can knock all the bullets away. That's another good example of the themes of Evangelion there, isn't it? Because you have Toji and Kisuke who don't really care that much about Shinji, and in fact Toji like punches him, and they don't like him. And then when they go and see him fighting, and they then go into the giant robot. Metaphorically, that means Shinji is letting them get closer to him. And they see him and they see his suffering. And they see how hard it is to do what he's doing. By letting them in, they immediately become friends. Like, he immediately apologises after that bit. And see, that's a nice little... That little bit is a nice little bit showing, like, how Shinji can actually improve. He let two people actually get close to him and see how vulnerable he is. And that actually improved things for him rather than made things worse. Because that's how he got those two friends.
Yeah.
And I was like, because Evangelion Rebuild has to cut everything really short, that's nice, because it's just there, in this nice little block in the middle of the movie. Like,
It does cut a lot of things short, and I think, obviously, I think the best thing to talk about if you want a comparison one is Razafon, because as we talked about when we were looking at Razafon...
Well, there's no kiss her! Kiss the...
Yeah. But no, what I was talking about with that is, because Razafon did a movie, but unlike trying to do whenever it did 4, Razafon I didn't have the same feeling, because I felt like the Razafon movie's quite rushed, but actually what they did is they just cut like 6 months of the plot out and made things happen faster and cut entire characters. And that actually still, I think it worked, because they kept the bare bones, but they changed the plot in the ways they wanted to, and they made it faster, but it still worked coherently as a film. And actually, I still think you can watch the Razafon film without having watching the TV show, and it's a coherent film with a coherent plot, and it feels a bit quick and rushed, but it's explained itself, and it hasn't had any things that just came out of nowhere or that were just annoying, from memory anyway. It's been a few years since we did that.
No, yeah, the Razafon film stands on its own pretty solidly.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is a bit distracting because, of course, it spends a long time just sort of like throwing the main character from one place to the next.
Oh yeah, no, it's very hectic as a film because it has to do all of the stuff that needs doing and doesn't really have the time that the Razafon series has to have him in between everything, cooling off and hanging with people and developing characters and being a person. Yeah, but that's very much the same with this film. Is Shinji he goes to school, and you see that he goes to school, but because we're basically jump cutting between every angel fight, the only time we ever see him at school is for one moment where he goes, "Oh, I guess Ray's not here," or "Oh, I guess Ray is here," and then another moment when he's being punched by Toji. And then the next moment where he's punching him.
And also hanging out and noticing Ray. Well, yeah, because Shinji's daily life kind of can't be the focus because you can't get that rhythm in a movie.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is you have to take that out.
Yeah.
And so because of that, the film is basically Shinji turns up. Shinji fights 3-4 battles. I can't remember how many it is. Is it 3 or 4?
Yeah, he fights 3 angels in this one, yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. But it's not got a good standalone structure to a film in that there isn't, like, the ending is that he vaguely connects with Ray.
Well, no,
vaguely.
He very powerfully connects with Ray. He does exactly the same thing his father does. So Ray then acknowledges him.
No, he does the big gesture, which I would say opens the connection more than makes it. It's a case
say that
of
he's doing exactly the same thing that he did earlier in the movie to the people that then became his friends.
Yes.
So,
but it's still anyway. Okay, fine. But the thing is, that is the ending, and it's sort of the difference, I suppose, with the Razafon one is the Razafon one knew it was a standalone and it didn't have a second film. But it just felt like it is actually not a film. It's just 3 or 4 episodes of a show strung together because it knows it's got several more films to do the actual stuff.
But it does do actual stuff. It doesn't it does reach a pretty adequate conclusion because you can't expect everything to be wrapped up because I don't expect everything to be wrapped up. Shinji to be a complete person by the end of it. But I think you do see a solid improvement in Shinji over the literal 3 acts of the film, which are broken up with 3 literal angel fights. Which, as you know, in Evangelion, the angel fights show basically a big version of what Shinji's actual internal trauma is, and that doesn't get repeated later on.
I do think
one is a solid film on its own. It's just that there is a lot of to be continued in it. But in terms of Shinji's growth, we get a solid arc for Shinji.
I think the problem with it is I try to look at it as if you didn't know the series, as if you're a standalone person coming without any knowledge of Evangelion, which I just feel like you're just kind of thrown in the way of it's just Shinji fights and big monster.
But the Shinji fights big monsters, but the big monsters represent what Shinji is going through. And in that,
They do, but without seeing enough of him in between the two.
We do.
The 2 gaps between the giant monster fights. I just don't feel it's fleshed out enough to have the giant monster fights be as obviously, showing his growth or his difference. The first giant monster fight, I agree, right? The first one, he's bloody useless. He just stumbles, the thing goes berserk, and it does it all for him. Second one, he tries because he has now done some training, but he's very closed off, and he just, pulls the trigger and then, stabs the thing. And he achieves success on his own, but he does it by disobeying and being cold and blah, blah. And then the third one, he and Ray work together, and then it's got, a cohesive, I'm working with the military, and we don't feel that everyone's sort of standoffish against one another. They're all one cohesive unit, and they succeed properly, and that's good. So I do get that the 3 different fights have different endings, which all help.
Well, no, yeah, but it's not about. It's not just about learning within universe how to operate as a team. It's like it's a more obvious representation of like the troubles that Shinji is going through. It's like Shinji turns up and he just does what people are told him to, and it kind of works out, but that gets him into like this worse situation where he's just like a piece of a machine. The second one, like you say there's nothing to tell us it, but there's this whole early bit where you show how lonely he is and how he doesn't really connect with Misato. It's kind of weird, and he's got no friends, and like the people in his classmate dislike him just because he pilots the Eva, even though he really didn't want to that one time, and so he's just there.
And also because if he didn't, they'd have all been killed.
Yeah, of course, that's the underlying thing. That's a diegetic reason why everyone's horrible to him. But this can be stretched to other things, and so like he's there just following orders, and that doesn't work out for him. But the actual process of beating the second angel isn't that important. He was going to beat it. The important thing is that he beats it while letting two people understand like the kind of problems that he's going through. He lets them inside the robot, so he doesn't look like he's in this big old robot. They see that he's just a person barely hanging on, and that allows them to empathize with his position. And then he gets some friends. And the third one is Shinji then doing that to Rei. Like, he seemed to think that he was the only person going through all of this problems. He was all focused on himself, and that was actually starting to really trouble him because he wasn't paying attention. You know, he disobeyed Misato in the second one because he was all focused on himself. And then he's able to empathize with what's happening with Rei, and he just so happens in that process of, like, getting actually worried about Rei and working with her, does the exact same thing that his father did, which is important to Rei because it's the only time anyone's ever seen her as an important human being that they care about. And so that allows Rei to sort of connect with Shinji. And that's where it ends, at like the emotional level. A lot of the other like stuff is still going on, but the important thing is you have this thing of Shinji both gradually opening up and then gradually learning to empathize with other people.
I do know what you mean, I do, but I do think that the knowledge of the characters and the series is what allows that to work without...
I think they do. I do think it's a lot easier if you already know who Shinji is. But there's a lot of stuff in there that's like that's quite clearly there to show you what it is. Like Gendo's letter to him, and the way that they react to each other, and the way that like these brief scenes in between everything are put together. The way in which, like, after being yelled at for disobeying orders, Shinji basically goes out and just lives on the streets for, like, a day.
I do agree with you, and I do think it does fit. I do, though, I still think that without that knowledge, it's too hectic, and it's too rushed, and it's too lacking in sort of a defining... It's too much a placeholder for the next film. It's too much of a setup for that, for my liking. And the thing is, there's 4 of these, right, total?
There will be 4, hopefully, yeah. The fourth one hasn't come out.
No, but I'm saying they've sort of said it will end with 4, right?
Yeah, we hope so. I haven't got a confirmation, but generally they say, yeah, this will be it.
This was about an hour and 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Which, if you assume the running length of all 4 are roughly that, then that's 7 hours.
Yeah, the second one is about an hour and 52 minutes, and the other one is about an hour and a half.
Okay, well, just say as an average then, the 4 films are 7 hours, and 7 hours would be, if you think an episode's half an hour, it's then therefore 14 episodes. But an episode isn't half an hour, really, because you knock off the next time on and the credits opening and closing. You get roughly 22, right? So that's 7 times 60 minutes, 420 minutes divided by 25 minutes, or let's call it 22, means you'd get about 19 episodes worth of a series out of the same runtime.
I think that's enough. If you...
No, it is enough, because it's basically almost a full series. It's just... You cut a bit more filler out of most 26-episode shows, and you could get them down to 19 to 20 normally, I would have thought. And, yeah, if they just took a bit more out of the original series of Eva, you could definitely cut enough in Eva to just have compacted it down to that. But that's what I'm saying. It does feel like the first... I felt like I'd watched the first, 4 or 5 episodes, maybe, of a series in a row.
Well, I don't know.
And
Like
I
you
didn't
said,
feel
I can
like I'd watched
understand
the film.
how it feels like that, but I would say that Shinji has enough of an arc to carry this one movie. And also kind of Misato. It's also Misato sort of gaining a bit of trust.
Misato is interesting, I think, in that... So in the original series, Misato is absolutely manipulating Shinji to do what she wants
90%
via
of the time. Yeah.
her affection and either withdrawing it or implying it could lead to more. Like, she absolutely is doing that. And hell, even, again, spoiler for the original series, even like the last thing she does before she dies is to kiss him in order to get him to go and do the thing she wants to do.
Okay, I can understand how you go. Before you go further, I should say for everyone listening, I do not believe that you can compare the character actions at the end of Eva to the character actions in the TV series. Because End of Eva is more of a giant fuck you to capitalism and to the people who complained about the original ending 2 episodes of Eva. And so I think a lot of character actions in End of Eva are deliberately sadistic choices to punish the viewer for being... So I understand what you mean, but I don't consider that part of... Oh yeah, it's still a fantastic film. But at the same time, I do not...
I do agree with you though, because actually, people watched Instrumentality and went... Wait. So after all the angels were defeated, they basically all had therapy and achieved pseudo-enlightenment and became decent people on a higher plane of thought. What? I didn't get that. That was weird. Okay, fine. They didn't all get happy and achieve a higher plane of thought and become comfortable with themselves. They all died horribly and suffered. Are you happy now? Are you happy, audience?
Yeah, that's what's nice about Rebuild, is I get the feeling this will hopefully not have that sort of ending.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I think it might go for a bit more of a middle ground, personally. But
you are
not
right.
having watched the other 3, I don't know.
We should say Misato is much less manipulative in this movie.
All right, fine.
That's what we should get back
to. But no. That's what I'm saying, is she's much less manipulative than in End of Eva. But I still think that she's manipulative in the original but the original series. Anyway, the series that I have on DVD somewhere. She's very manipulative. But the thing is, I think the main thing I thought about the film was that all of the slow burn, interesting stuff, like finding out that actually... Because actually, if you watch the original series, you don't really get the whole she's manipulating him and she's fully aware of what she's doing and how, until you get to a certain point in the series. In this, it's like a scene in that she's like talking to Ritsuko and is like, yeah, sure, I'm manipulating him. And it's all very obvious that she's doing it to everyone other than perhaps Shinji. And she's doing it in a much more forceful way as well.
I think she's doing it in a way where she's a bit more sort of like, I feel bad about it. And I think she felt bad about it in the TV show. I just remember early on in the TV show, she's just very clearly, she'll say whatever because everyone's about to die.
And I absolutely agree with that. It's like, oh, you're messing with a small teenage boy's feelings. And I'm like, in exchange for the world's survival. Yeah, sure, beat him, whatever. Whoa. I don't care. No, do whatever you want to Shinji. Shinji is not a nice person, and I don't care. But the point is, if you've got the whole world at stake, the emotional well-being of a teenage boy is not something that should prevent you from saving it.
Whoa, that's cold. But also, you got to remember, this is saying other things. The whole world-ending thing, yeah, of course it makes sense in that. But Eva is also talking about, the actual manipulation that people experience every day. It's it's just in a heightened level. People do the sorts of things that Gendo does every day, not for grand world-altering reasons, but they just do it to get what they want.
Yeah. But I think the other difference being that because she knows now, so in the original, again, so many years since I've seen it, but my memory of the original series is she behaves in a fairly upfront manner, and then she does all the digging and then finds out all the stuff, and it's only then that she's really getting quite manipulative once she knows the score and she gets her own agenda once she realizes what everyone else's agenda really is. But in the first half of the series, her agenda, she thinks, aligns with everyone else's because her agenda is stop the angels, keep the pilots piloting, let's keep the world safe. Mm-hmm. You know? And
what
it's
does
only
it
when she
change
finds
to?
out
Because that's...
No, I think it's not that her agenda so much changes as much as it's that she realizes her agenda is not any not really shared by either
But
the
what
board
do they have? What's their
or
other agenda?
the directors.
Oh, the
What, the
Sele
director
directors.
and the board?
Oh, right, you're saying that. So the human
Sele
instrumentality.
Sele and Gendo both have entirely different agendas
I don't
to
think she knows
the
that
public
in
agenda
the
of
movie. I
Nerve. No,
don't think she
not
knows about
well,
instrumentality
it's hard to
and
tell.
stuff like that. The fact that basically everyone's plotting the same thing. They just want they think they're fighting to save the world, but in reality, what they're fighting is so that a bunch of evil old guys can pick how the world ends.
Yeah.
Which again, that's just like the giant robot manure around it. Like that happens to everyone all the time. You spend your time like working really hard and trying to do stuff, and then you realise, oh no, wait, all I'm doing is just helping people fathomably more powerful than me achieve their ends, and I get very little.
Yeah.
And then you destroy capitalism. Or you try to destroy capitalism, but then you get eaten by it at, like in End of Eva, what happens to Asuka.
I think the thing is, I fundamentally don't like Shinji. And he's 90% of this film, and that's probably why I'm a bit down on it.
You'll probably hopefully like the next film, then. We can end it there, because the next film both introduces...
If he's less in it,
introduces Asuka, and Asuka basically has the same thing, because she's like, same thing of Shinji. Shinji is so lonely, he'll take any kind of affection, even if it makes him like an object. Meanwhile, Asuka doesn't want to be treated like an object, but only gains self-worth by unknowingly buying into being treated like an object.
The thing is, I think though that the thing is, I'm well aware that my knowledge of Shinji's TV show and other films is probably colouring my knowledge of this Shinji. But I also think, objectively, I don't like Shinji in the film either. Even if you treat him as a separate character, change his name, change the trappings, or make me forget the other stuff, I don't like him because I suppose he's not got... The only redeeming thing he really does is sort of when he tries to save Rey at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything else is either he's doing the right thing, but he's moaning about it, and he's making excuses constantly, and he's also terrible at his job, and he's also he's just always complaining about... Like, people keep telling him, you can just leave. And he goes, no, I'm going to stay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay and I'm act like you're all making me stay. You know, it's just this not...
Well, he can't actually...
He's such a teenage boy.
He can't actually leave. I don't think he's a teenage boy. I think he's depressed.
He is depressed, but I think... I don't know. I just find him irritating, I suppose, is my problem with it.
It's like,
and actually,
you've been there, haven't you? The thing where you're in a job and you have to work with this person and you can't get out right away. And so you have to just every day go and work either at this job that's really horrible or with this person that's really horrible. And you just have to slog through it. And you do find yourselves hating that person, but you don't know why that person is acting that way.
In my experience, it's because that person's a prick. But, you know.
But with Shinji, the whole point is like he has no self-worth, and he thought by going and piloting Eva, he could get like a tiny amount of affection from his father, which is how he feels like he won't feel worthless. And the whole thing of Eva, like as a whole gigantic show, is you can't rely on other people for your feelings of self-worth. That's literally the point at which Eva, the TV show, ends. It's like, you've got to be responsible for your own happiness. And Shinji coming to terms with that, I think, will always be the main plot of Eva. That's a good place to end.
Yeah.
But yeah, then let's end it like a proper Eva and go, remember, next series we've got Asuka Shikigami now some reason that everyone loves.
I was really annoyed at all of the bloody... spoilers, because I left
all of the.
I left the credits
it's all
on.
fake.
I just left the credits on.
It's all fake.
Is it? Really?
None of them are the same. That's happened. Like I looked at the next on for movie 2. I remember doing that and going, "Ooh, let's see what that is," and you had to wait a long time because that one got delayed. And then movie 3 turned up, and it's like nothing that appeared in the preview, and it's the same for movie 1. I did a check. So yeah, it's a deliberate. Let's just use what we have.
Okay,
so trust me, that doesn't happen.
Fine.
But yeah.
All right, no, that's fine. But yeah, it did kind of annoy me that they just went like, next film on Evangelion!
In a year.
Oh,
This
God.
was the one
No,
that had
I
the shortest turnaround, the first two films.
Well, no, I did note that this was 2007. Like, I was aware that Ava films were coming out, and I remember when the first one came out thinking, I like Ava. I probably will like the new films. Do you know what? I'll wait and watch all three of them when the trilogy's finished.
13 years later.
Yeah, 13 years is kind of a bit of a thing. Because this was it 2007? 2007's the one that was the figure on the film I watched.
Yeah.
But I watched 1.1, which I understand might be different from 1.0, which was the theatrical release.
Yeah, the theatrical release, yeah.
But yeah.
He started work on it. He started work on it in 2002, and the first film was published in 2007. The second film was released in 2008. The third film was released in the fall of 2012.
Okay, 4 years, right?
And now, hopefully, 2020.
And then it's been another 7 years.
Yeah, it's been 5 years since the last one, because it was released 2015. And so, now it's released 2020.
Wait, what? I thought you said 2007, 2008, 2012. I thought that's what you said.
Oh, sorry, no, yeah, it was released around 2015.
So, yes, 7 years.
So, no, it was 2002, 2007, 2008, then it was finally released 2015.
7 years. Okay, that's the bad one. And then this one's likely to be
because
5.
in all fairness, he did make Shin Godzilla, which is one of the best Godzilla films ever made.
Oh yeah, I did hear that actually. We should watch Shin Godzilla. I've not seen it.
We can watch Shin Godzilla after watching the third movie, so we can watch it as like part of the whole
Let's talk about
Evangelion.
his
Hideki Anno.
angst and need of therapy.
Careful. If you talk about Hideki Anno, I'm going to drag his and her circumstances out and make you watch that. That's when he's finished.
Maybe not.
He finished Evangelion and he said, "I'm going to adapt a shoujo manga now." It is really good. It's probably the best thing he's ever made until Shin
Really?
Godzilla came out. Yeah, in terms of like animation, it's gorgeous because it's not about him. That's what's nice about it. It's like, hey, Hideki Anno, maybe you could make something about someone else.
I'll watch it. We'll put it on the list. There you go. We're going to have... I think we've decided we're going to have a
Hideki Anno season.
Like,
why not?
Marathon then.
He's a good creator. Everything he's made has generally been pretty good. Which is kind of weird. It's kind of weird to think that a guy who regularly poses with his Ultraman belt buckles and does the Ultraman pose is such a great director. But, you know, I think maybe you should trust on that. I'd much rather my great directors wear silly belt buckles than almost kill Uma Thurman.
Is that a Tarantino thing?
Yes, that is.
I wasn't aware that happened.
Yeah, I'll tell you later. But yeah, hopefully the listeners know what it is. So we'll see you all next time for Evangelion 2.22. You can not advance.